Hi, and sorry for a slight half an hour delayed show, but this is the first of the season FinDepth Hangout, and we've got uh, Dustin, one of the founders of the site, and a new contributor, Rob, who you'll get to read a lot of his content in the coming season. So, Rob, you want to introduce yourself to everyone that may or may not know you?
Yeah, my name's Rob Profit. You can follow me on Twitter at Breaking Down Film, BREAKIN Down Film. I've been a Dolphins fan my whole life. My dad's been a Dolphins fan since 1971. So when I was born, I had no options in life but to be a Dolphins fan. So it's one of my passions. So just glad to be on board with Finsiders, Dustin and Oscar, Ian and Jake, and Pablo. So glad to be on board.
Glad to have you. All right. So Pablo?
So I guess we'll start on the third, or the hottest maybe topic, or one of them, and the lasers unveiling of the offense. So Dustin, if you want to kind of go through what kind of we learnt from it and what we didn't, and kind of anything that stood out to you.
Right, okay. Some of the things that I thought were very interesting to me were that it was the first time since Philbin and company have been here that I looked at our offense and said, okay, this is very West Coast offense reminiscent. It's not completely, but I would say if I had to put a percentage on it, just watching some of the formations and everything, it's probably like a 65-70% of a West Coast offense with a little bit of some deeper concepts in it. But for instance, on the snaps, everything is out of shotgun, and that's not something that is necessarily always the case in the West Coast offense. The West Coast offense does like it, but it doesn't necessarily have it every single play. So I think he borrowed that a little bit from Chip, to be honest. And then last night watching the linemen, some scat protection and quick protection from the linemen were really good to see. And just using screens, I mean, that in the motion, the one play that they got out to Gibson on the play action rollout to the bubble screen it ended up being a little clumsy, but the idea is fantastic. So just they got to work on it a little bit. It got like 6 yards, so successful. But you don't want to see Gibson running into his receiving blocker. But overall, yeah, it's very, very much more close to the West Coast offense concepts than it has been in the past, and that's fantastic to me.
Well, I think as we're seeing I think there's a stat somewhere where it was 70% of snaps last year in the NFL were from the shotguns. I think most West Coasts are kind of moving towards that way. We saw a couple under center play action, like traditional rollouts as well. I think that was one of the drive. So,
I mean, I don't know if you guys happen to watch the Ravens game, but they're now a West Coast offense, supposedly too. But they still operate a lot under center as opposed to shotgun.
And just what Kubiak likes to do, halving the field and
I think
action.
If I had to say, if there is a coach in the league that is the closest in concept to Walsh, it would be Kubiak. He's kind of the one who hasn't adapted much. But he's using quite a bit of under center in the Ravens camp over there, as opposed to we're not using it. I haven't seen any in the camps that I've been to or on the game last night.
There was a couple in the game, but not a huge amount. I think it was probably, I can remember 4 or 5, and we didn't really pass out of them very much. It was generally just handoffs, but obviously then they want to eventually would do some play action out of that. So I think it will be in there, but it'll be a small component.
Right.
And,
Right. Well, I mean, it just reminds me so much of watching, because watching the Eagles last year, I think even though we're not really using the no huddle like the Eagles used, we have borrowed a decent amount from them. For instance, the West Coast loves using running back screens, but so did Chip Kelly's horizontal spread, or I'm sorry, vertical spread. And they used the running backs a lot last year, and they used mostly shotgun. And I see a lot of that in this offense, and it makes me happy.
I think that was kind of the biggest thing I saw was kind of early on as well as the running backs being utilised in the passing game. I think we probably saw Miller being targeted early in progressions more than ever last year, and
Right.
although he's not kind of a natural pass catcher, if you're getting in space, you're going to be able to catch balls. We're not like getting him to make kind of any athletic plays. I don't think he's going to be.
Yeah, Miller's interesting because he grew up down here going to Killian High School, and I got to see him there, and I got to see him at the U, obviously, and he was never really asked to catch the ball. It was something the coaches never really asked him to do. Maybe they did in practice and they didn't like what he saw, but in the games they never really asked him to do it. And then he gets the Dolphins, and I kind of see maybe a little reason why in the previous years where his kind of like Wallace a little bit, where his routes are kind of unpredictable. Maybe it's 3 yards on a wheel, or maybe it's 2. It's kind of it can be pretty different in the previous years. But seeing in camp this year and seeing the game, it seems so far that he's really been working on making that not the case anymore.
And perhaps the move to numbers verbiage kind of helps in that kind of understanding of passing concepts instead of a West Coast offense. And
right. I mean, if you have a running back that can't catch in a West Coast offense, unfortunately, that's not the running back for you. I mean, look, but that kind of brings me back to 2012 when we had Reggie Bush. When, come on, the guy catches. That's what he does, and you don't use him like that. So Sherman just was an enigma to me.
Did anything stand out to you, Rob, in the first drive with Tannehill and Albert? They were kind of the only first teams that went out after that.
You asked me. Sorry, man, your accent. You asked me what stood out to me.
Yeah, in the first drive of the offense, or just an offense at all.
It was just how different the offense looked. Obviously, I think the pass protection is going to be not as big of an issue as it was last year. The 5 starters that we had on the field last night looked, in my opinion, they looked really good. I think Jawan James, as I've said for a while, I thought was a plug-and-play right tackle. Was going to be great in pass protection, and they look good to me. I think there's going to be an issue in the run blocking area. But I've spoken a couple times about my hope that Shelley Smith and Billy Turner develop throughout this year as the year goes on, because I think they're very crucial to our run game. They're much better run blockers, or they have the potential to be much better run blockers than College or Dallas Thomas. So my hope is they can win those starting jobs when Pouncey comes back. The run game improves. Although they're not as good in the pass protection as probably College or Dallas are right now, it's kind of one of those things I'm looking at. Do I want to give up a little bit of good pass protection for some better run blocking? I don't know. I think we're gonna lean a lot on passing the ball kind of heavy this year. But my hope is Shelley Smith and Billy Turner beat out the guys in front of them, and Mike Pouncey comes back healthy as quick as possible.
Well, I think you saw that
I like what I've seen last night.
I think as soon as you saw Billy Turner and Chase Smith come in, I think it was the start of the third quarter, they instantly were making much more movement up into the second level. Like one pitcher, like a still out, I think it was maybe the third or fourth run, and it was Billy, James, and Shelley all in the second level, and even Landry in a block 5 yards down. And so it is quite interesting that we kind of have almost kind of that I kind of disagree with how I think the O-line looked pretty bad the first drive. Soliai was destroying it, and it just happened the runs were going past him, and he was overcommitting. The defensive end was, I think it was Babineau, was kind of hesitant, which you kind of want your defensive end to do on the read, and that also allowed the run to go for longer than it should have. That's quite an interesting thing, which is Chip Kelly-like as well. We're leaving one of the perimeter defenders free, and that allows hat on hat everywhere else. So you're kind of lessening a man. But that kind of means Tannehill's going to have to run quite early on to make that perimeter defender not just crash every time and take out the backside of the play. So that's going to be interesting, and then perhaps that's why we saw that triple option play, just so to stop those defenders crashing. But I thought the centre play was pretty bad. The interior line play was pretty bad in the run game, in particular, the first half. I mean, and they were in for half the game, and it didn't really get any better. The only player that subbed out in the first half was Albert for Fox, and I mean, Albert wasn't great, but I mean, Albert doesn't need to prove anything right now. Everyone else is.
As far as the first unit goes, I think I agree with you, Oscar, in that the guards and center were not great in run blocking last night. I also agree with you, Rob, that with maybe Smith and Turner, that it could get better. Going through the game, the run blocking did tend to get a little bit better, but it's hard to tell whether or not that was because they came in or because some of the defensive tackles came out. But I will say the starting offensive line in pass blocking, save one play, was actually fantastic. And the one play that I say that it wasn't fantastic, it was still pretty good, but Brandon Albert actually allowed a pressure on the
Matthews pass.
Exactly, on the Matthews pass. But, you know, like you said, I'm not worried about him, but the pass protection was pretty good last night, I thought.
But they're quite quick balls. There was no pressure, though, so I guess that's something. It's easy to, when it's 4 on 5.
Right.
We didn't. I think it was 3 blitzes the whole game. So they were pretty plain.
True.
Pressure-wise, so I was looking more at the run game, and perhaps as kind of Rob, you were alluding to, we kind of have the 2 second stringers are better run blockers. So kind of perhaps in an ideal sacrifice is you have Colin and then Billy, or vice versa, and you kind of, so you can at least run to one side and you're keeping the blind side clean. I think that could be a good compromise. I was much more impressed with Billy, his first couple of snaps against Rashid Hageman, who was kind of in through the second, from about the second quarter to the third quarter, and he did really well against him. So I think there were kind of like comparable players you could, or matchups you could see to judge them. I think Billy did really well his first couple of snaps, like the limited work he got. So I guess now the second, issue of contention is the linebacker course. Maybe Robert, I saw you on Twitter today, you've been talking a bit about Komisi. So maybe if you want to talk about some things you saw and issues or areas you can improve.
Yeah, I don't know if I came across it initially. I didn't think we did good in the run blocking department last night. What I was saying is I thought we did really good in the pass blocking area on the first drive, which I seem to be in a bad habit of comparing us with everything we do right now to last year in those 58 sacks. So when I said I thought we did good, I was kind of alluding to the pass protection. But when we talk about Misi, here's the thing. from watching football all my life, is the middle linebacker position is an instinctual, maybe outside of quarterback, the most instinctual position on the field. A lot of the great linebackers, really good linebackers in the NFL, they've played that position their whole life. I mean, from the time they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they grew up playing that position. Cole Misi at the University of Utah was a defensive end.
Yep.
He came to the Dolphins, and he's never played the middle linebacker position. Now, can he develop technique? He could, but there's a lot of instincts that go into that position. You can tell last night, I mean, immediately on the very first defensive play, as a middle linebacker, your read has to be the offensive guard. And depending upon what they do, that's how the middle linebacker reacts. In this run play, his job is to meet the fullback or the guard in the hole, and not just stand there and allow the lineman to come out, 5 yards and engage him. And you can tell by his eyes that the first thing he does is he looks outside and then he looks in. As a middle linebacker, that's actually opposite. You have to look inside to out. And it's a lot of technique and refinement and coaching that's going to have to go into the development of Misi at the middle linebacker position. But ultimately, I think it's a major area of need, and I'm not trying to get too far ahead outside of 2014, but going into the future, I think the Dolphins are going to need a middle linebacker. Could Misi do good for 2014? Maybe, with some right coaching and a lot of help from the defensive line and the secondary, kind of covering up those weaknesses in the linebacker group. But right now, it is a, in my opinion, it's a weak unit. It's not a lot of instinctual players.
I think you basically highlighted the issue he was always going to have, is his instincts are to read from outside in, having always been an edge player. So you're basically trying to, in game speed, change someone's instinctive nature of reading. Or it's almost so like getting someone to use their right hand instead of left hand, or vice versa, or read Mandarin. You're doing it the opposite way. It's not going to be. So he'll need reps. I was surprised he was taken. I think he was only in nickel the first time. Then it was Wheeler and Alabi with a nickel pairing. So I thought he made some. I mean, he's going to be good at blitzing, because that obviously he's an edge player of nature. That's kind of his body type and what he's good at, is going downhill. But we don't need. I mean, we can put any of those guys and blitz them, and they're going to be effective, because those are the traits that are transferable to NFL. And it's gap integrity that we kind of have the issue with. And it was an interesting trip, got quite a lot of work in middle linebacker. I kind of am hesitant at him at that position, just because we saw a couple of times when offensive linemen did get their hands on him, he just gets devoured and it's play over. But when he was free and he made some better, he was better in pursuit to sidelines. Obviously, he's against lesser athletes than the first team would have been. But again, that's kind of what we were talking about with the offensive line, where you're going to sacrifice something. With Tripp, you're basically sacrificing. If we play any power football teams and they get offensive linemen to the second level and on him, then that's going to be a huge weakness. But you're getting some more instinctual play in return. So I don't know, either of you think about Tripp as a middle linebacker instead of like a Will, or anyone else you could see taking that, whether Ellaby just moves back in, or...
Do you say that again? You think do I think somebody can take over?
Any solutions, or do you just let Missy carry on and see if it clicks?
I don't know that there's any solutions in the short time, to be honest with you. Like I said on Twitter earlier, I thought in the run game instinctually, Tripp and McCain showed kind of the most instincts in the run game. But unfortunately, they're so raw, and their technique is kind of it's not really refined. So I I don't know that they're the solution right now, but you know, I don't really see a solution right now except trying to coach him up as best as the Dolphins coaching staff can do, and see if they can cover up and hide some of the weaknesses within the secondary. I think, you know, that's where, and I'm not trying to get ahead of what we're going to talk about, but I think that's kind of where losing Rashad Jones and Deion Jordan for the first 4 weeks is going to kind of hurt us, because those are two guys that are good enough players to you know, to possibly cover up some of the weaknesses that we may have at linebacker. But I don't really see any solutions, Oscar, in the short time period for Misi and his play. And Ellerby, I don't think Ellerby's that good. And to be honest with you, Wheeler's horrible. So I just, for me, in my opinion, I think you know, the Dolphins have a desperate need going into the 2015 season for some good linebackers. You know, so
everyone's going to be watching Denzel Perryman with extra enthusiasm. I think McCain's kind of an interesting player to talk about in regards to Misi, because obviously he's an edge player at Cal, played some defensive end, some 3-4 edge rusher. So I think they like that body type, that skill set in the linebacker core, which may surprise people as then you're turning Deion Jordan into a defensive end. But we saw Deion Jordan drop in coverage a bit, and he still looks quite fluid with his size. And so I don't think you're kind of losing anything in regards to that. So I don't know if, Dustin, you have anything you want to say about the linebacker core, anything that stood out to you other than bad arm tackles?
No, no. For the most part, I pretty much just straight up agree with everything being said. I do want to maybe asterisk it though and say that considering that middle linebacker is a position that is instinctual and learned over many, many years, I do think that considering Misi has been playing it now for, 4 weeks or so, if you count OTAs and all that, I do think that he showed something that I didn't expect, and that was on that one play, he ended up missing the tackle. Like, the guy shook him right out of his boots, but he chose the right gap, and to me, that's already kind of a step up from Ellerby, because if I had one knock on Ellerby last year, it was definitely his gap choice and fidelity. So I am leaving that yesterday's game with the question, Misi wasn't good, but he seems to be catching on to something. The question for me is how much will he catch up on by game week against the Patriots? And until we know for sure that, you know, he's caught a lot, it's going to definitely be a question of, you know, how can we hide the linebackers for now?
You know, I think it'd be interesting to see kind of what role he ends up, whether he ends up with a 2-down linebacker role, whether he's in nickel or not. Kind of
right.
Take away some responsibilities.
If this was, you know, make-believe land and I had any kind of control over what maybe the Dolphins defense would do, I honestly would love to see them go with a 4-5-2 like Chicago Bears defense, bring in a third safety, and you know, I think that would help hide that linebacking core some.
Maybe not now that Rashad Jones is gone, but maybe after the 4 weeks.
Right. No, I'm talking overall.
Yeah, in theory, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think I want to put Walt Aikens or Don Jones out there yet. So. And
even Jimmy Wilson wasn't that great playing down in the box safety. There was that one play that ended up being flagged where both he and Aikens.
Right. I mean, I do want to go into these flags though a little bit because, oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, it's been every single game.
I know, and every game, like,
it's pretty horrible.
It's just, I do agree with the whole 5-yard rule, but the way that they're enforcing it, where all you got to do is, you know, breathe on a guy the wrong way after 5 yards, and you get a holding call. I mean, Misi's sack was taken away from him, because Louis Delmas literally touched a guy's arm. You know, it wasn't even a hold. It was he touched his arm, and then no sack. It was like, come on, really?
I think the fear of what people seem to think will happen is they're going to be really strict for the preseason, hoping that players get a bit more subtle, and then it'll be a bit more lenient come regular season. But we'll see. But yeah, I doubt they'll.
I mean, I'm seeing.
Stop watching football.
I'm seeing every coach get like really pissed off at this. I got to the point last night after watching, 26 pass interference calls the previous night. I was like, yo, if this is how the NFL is going to be this year, I kind of, for a split second, and then I woke up, but I was like, man, do I really want to watch this stuff this year? Where, but, it's the NFL, and I'm going to watch it anyway. But, it was just like, come on, this is getting crazy.
So I guess we'll move to the offensive line. We kind of touched upon it a tiny bit. But maybe, Rob, was there anything kind of you've seen change with James's technique or play, anything like his footwork that stood out to you, or anyone kind of lower down the depth chart that flashed, other than the Billy and Shelley that we kind of mentioned earlier?
With Juwan, like I said, he's a guy that I tabbed as a plug-and-play right tackle. But I think he actually has more upside as a left tackle down the road. But as far as his first preseason game, he was not as strong in the run game. But to be honest with you, as Dolphin fans, we should be just happy that Ryan Tannehill is able to stand in the pocket for more than about 2.5 seconds and deliver the ball on a timing route or something. So with that being said, Juwan James, he did real good last night. And to be honest with you, the Falcons' defensive line is not too shabby. So for him to play the amount of time that he did, and to really keep the quarterbacks upright and clean, I thought it was a good job. Billy is very athletic. And Billy initially is probably a much better run blocker because of his athleticism. But I've always said, man, like I want to see Billy and Juwan lined up next to each other. I know that to some people is pretty risky, considering that both of them are rookies. But they are great learners. They are very coachable, and I think Billy corrects his mistakes that he has kind of in the pass protection. But I honestly think right now Juwan James is a pretty good pass blocking right tackle in the NFL. I'm not willing to put him in the top 5 or 10 or anything like that, but I mean he's right now. I mean, according to what he looked last night, he was better than Claybub. So he held his own. He held his own at right tackle. Yeah, he held his own at right tackle at least for a couple quarters. Which, as I said, as a Dolphins fan, that's all we can ask for right now, because I believe Ryan Tannehill can be a weapon. I believe Ryan Tannehill is athletic enough, and he has a strong enough arm. In this system, he can make plays and win us ball games. The key is going to be, can we keep this guy upright and allow him to make some plays? Last year was horrible, 58 sacks. We all know that, and it was bad. So Juwan James is a big help immediately to keep Ryan Tannehill upright. And like I said earlier, I really hope Billy wins the right guard job. I'd like to see him at right guard, and I'd like to see Shelley Smith at left guard. And when Pouncey comes back, if this unit can gel, I believe offensive lines have to gel. If they can gel, this can be a very formidable unit, in my opinion.
Well, I think there's something kind of interesting I noticed in run blocking that kind of affected some plays, and it's something that I've posted a couple of times, these Alex Gibbs outside zone tutorials. Or like coaching clinics, and Gibbs worked with Benson and the Texans in Benson's first couple of years, and it's basically the hand placement and the clubbing of the backside, and Albert wasn't doing it, and James kind of didn't do it. Billy did it really well. Like Billy's hand placement was, and maybe it comes because he came so raw, and Ian kind of cited this before when he was at the Senior Bowl, how well Billy took on coaching, as you were saying, Rob, and because he kind of hasn't been taught high quality coaching, that kind of he's easier to work from a raw base. Basically, what kind of an issue could be is, so it happens with Albert before he gave up that pressure. I think it was the second or third run. He's not getting his hands on close enough. Ends up getting in a hand fight, and he's letting the defender push him out and leak out the backside without clubbing the back arm. And that's basically what Gibbs would teach, is you basically make a fist and you just whack them around the shoulder, and it stops them leaking out. So it'll be interesting to see if we see kind of that develop anymore, and we see, particularly in outside zone, where we're wanting to get lateral movement, which we didn't really see much of until actually play action to Gibson, when we actually saw the line get some lateral movement, and it was more of the defense overreacting than perhaps the O-line producing movement. But I think that's something I want to see kind of more. It's interesting to watch Billy's footwork. Obviously, he predominantly played left side. He played right tackle, I think, his freshman year. But I think his bucket steps a bit elongated, and could maybe speed that up and start driving up field quicker. But other than that, he looks pretty good, and getting his hands, like kind of aspects for young players or offensive line players, I kind of look for his foot speed and then how quickly they get up into the pads and drive up. And Rashid Hageman, who he was up against for quite a bit of the game, I really liked. So I think that was a good challenge. He does have kind of a pad level problem, so it's quite easy to get up underneath his pads and drive him up. But I think he's still like an athletic freak, so I think that was a good test, and interesting to kind of see how. I think Dallas struggled with that as well as leverage. Someone got kind of like pushed into Miller in one play. That was in the same play as Albert Lee, the edge player leaping the backside. So I think there's been a lot of talk about Dallas Thomas improving his lower body strength. I think we saw flashes of it in pass protection, and then you can't really re-anchor great at the moment. And so I still think he needs to work on that. It kind of looks better, but that's kind of one area of improvement he kind of needs in the run game in particular, is being able to use that lower body strength to re-anchor and drive back. Then Fox flash stuff. He looked really good to the last Lions game, which I think was the only game he played every snap. He came in pretty much after the second drive and left tackle, and then played some right tackle as well. I know Garner then played right tackle after playing centre for a while. So we kind of saw some, because I think those two players, that's going to be the battle for maybe the last roster spot, who gets the swing tackle job. I think Fox, he gave up one pretty big play with an interior inside pressure, but he moved quite well. But yeah, and that's kind of what I'm looking at, the kind of tail end of the offensive line. I think Shelley, Dallas, Billy all get jobs, and then it's Brenner, Fox, Garner, who kind of gets, maybe there's two jobs there. Maybe there's one, depending kind of, if it's Garner, there's maybe one. Otherwise, maybe it's Brenner and Fox. And so it's kind of interesting kind of how that would play out. And so I don't know if any of you kind of saw anything from the tail end, or should we move on to Rashad Jones in the safety position?
I just wanted to make a quick note about schematically. I think I'm pretty confident that it was play 2. It was a handoff to Lamar Miller. I'm pretty confident that that was actually a read option play that could have been taken by Tannehill because the end did move in. I'm not sure if they are trying not temporarily to say, hey, even if it's there, just hand it off for now because it's preseason. We don't want you breaking a leg or whatever. But he could have taken that, and I found it schematically interesting that they were willing to put that out there right away. And the reason I noted it is because Brandon Albert left the defensive end completely alone. You know, he double teamed with College on the defensive tackle, and then went to the next level, which is what leads me to believe. And Tannehill looked like he was looking at the defensive end too. So I found that schematically interesting. And also, as we have been on here, PFF has finished up and posted everything for the game. So when we're done just chatting, if we want to go over any of their stuff, I think that could be cool.
Okay, that's fortuitous. So I guess, Rob, do you want to talk about, you kind of mentioned Rashad Jones, obviously going to now miss 4 games, we heard yesterday. And do you maybe want to talk anything about what Jimmy Wilson looked like playing safety, or Akins, and who kind of stood or scared you?
To be honest with you, it's much of the same that it's kind of been with Jimmy Wilson. You know, Jimmy Wilson is an inconsistent, B- level player to me. He's not a starter. He's a second string slot guy. And he'll make a play, and he'll make a mistake. And that's kind of what we seen last night. There were times where he was around the ball, and there was times where he's not. Walt Akins he's not ready. He needs a lot more practice, and he needs a lot more experience. But the Dolphins really need Rashad Jones back. I said it yesterday. I think you'll see, and everybody will see a difference without Rashad Jones out there. Just how important he is to the defense. He had a down year last year; it was pretty bad. But his 2012 was pretty good, and I think he can get back to that. He's athletic enough. He's young enough. He's still a good player. I think he can be helped out a lot by Coyle and kind of the schemes of the defense. So, we'll see how it goes. My hope is Cortland plays good, where it kind of allows the safeties to do a little bit of roaming on their own. In my opinion, I think Rashad Jones is a guy who's around the ball a lot. He has a lot of instincts as a safety, and I think he should have a little bit of free space to roam and not be so landlocked, as they say. That's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as Dustin, you brought up Pro Football Focus's grading, this kind of leads me into, I just looked through them quickly, and my boy Terence Fiday, who was my best player, or who I thought stood out the most to me in the performance, seems to have got the similar feedback from Pro Football Focus, having a 4.1 positive grade. I know he played the most snaps, and so I guess I watched quite a lot of him before.
Right.
About him.
I guess I can take this.
Pro Football Focus. So,
right. I guess I can also take a little bit of time just to explain for Dolphins fans, and everybody knows Pro Football Focus or has at least heard of them, and they know of the grading system. And you just brought up a good point about the snaps. You can look at 2 players with a 4.1 grade and think they're identical in play, but if one player got that same 4.1 in half of the snaps, that one is much better. And you really need to take that into account because everything on there is cumulative. It's not, okay, this is his average grade. No, that's his grade added and subtracted cumulatively from the very first play. So a positive grade just means, okay, most of the time his grade is per snap slightly better than average or slightly lower than average, and you can divide it by the snaps and get a much kind of truer representation of what you can expect from that player than just looking at the straight grade. And I don't necessarily always agree with the grades. even though I kind of saw behind the curtain and the blueprint of how they're made when I was doing some analysis for them a couple years ago. But I just want everybody to understand kind of how that works. So we look at the 4.1 for Fide, and we look at his 41 snaps compared to, let's say, Will Davis's 3.1 on 33. I thought Will Davis looked fantastic, except for that pass interference call last night. And Fide looked obviously very good as well, albeit going against, the second or third left tackle or whatever, but still.
That was Jake Matthews for a while.
Was it?
Yeah, his first snap was a pressure on Matt Ryan through Jake Matthews with a chipped running back.
Oh, okay.
He made some goals.
Sometimes I miss the other players' numbers.
It was interesting. So I guess I'll talk about Fide a bit. Basically, his whole time at Marist, he played right defensive end, and we saw him predominantly left defensive end. So it's quite interesting to see kind of how he moved over. He used to use, so always my kind of big issue with him has been his pad level, and he used to use, similar to Clowney, who'd do that over the head swim move inside, and it's quite interesting to have now that becomes an outside move. And so that was quite interesting. He used that twice, I believe.
When I watched his college stuff, the one thing that I wasn't that impressed with him was actually his repertoire of moves. But I feel like I don't know if it was Jason Taylor or the other players on the Dolphins, but his pass rush moves are definitely refined some more. He does more than one now. I'll say that. So he looked good last night. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I think if he can get off a bit lower, then he can kind of utilize that first quickness a bit more. We saw a bit of bend once he got engaged with the tackle. He was kind of bending, ripping around. One area I really like about him that's kind of shown a couple of times is when his awareness around and kind of his eye for the ball. There was one time a pass into the flat where he disengaged, made a tackle. The ball was fumbled or dropped, but if it was caught, that was a 6-yard loss. And there was another, he was at the play straight after he disengaged, a leg tackle, took down the runner before he got to the second level. So that's kind of just as more kind of less about his raw athleticism, but kind of football IQ and awareness for where the ball is. But yeah, I thought his hands still look quite heavy. He's just getting used them, and he got off the snap really well a couple of times, almost at like full snaps. So that kind of mental aspect seems good, and yeah, I was really impressed and glad he's got a lot of work. And Shelby looked pretty good as well. I thought at times he was interestingly Olivier Vernon didn't play at all, and Shelby kind of moved into that nickel interior rush player. So that's kind of I guess paints more of a picture of like where the depth is moving to. Maybe now talking about interior foot was interesting. One area that I think there was quite a large question mark through free agency is what's happening with the nose tackle position.
Right.
And Shelby was playing heads up and the zero technique, one technique. AJ Francis did thus afterwards. So I think that up front, I don't think we're going to see much different schematically wise. I think it'll be similar stunts, just losing 40 pounds, that kind of girth of Soliai. But Mitchell's still got that lower body power. We kind of saw that one ball rush where he destroyed the centre and dropped him 10 yards. But it's just kind of that whether he can take on a double team at a point of attacks. It's still going to be a question to maybe they'll stunt around him more or have him stunt gaps, so more shade, and they were just playing heads up as maybe give clearer reads for the linebackers of gaps instead of half man. I'm not sure. But I thought that was interesting. We're still going to see some zero technique.
I thought it was interesting. Good.
Go for it, Rob.
I was going to say, let's let's give a little credit to Casey Rogers, who I probably think may be the best positional coach on our team. Casey Rogers is a fantastic defensive
Absolutely.
line coach. I think that's why you see guys like Olivier Vernon and Derek Shelby and as your boy Fade, we see these guys getting better every day. We've seen the
Yep.
development of Derek Shelby and Olivier Vernon. Casey Rogers is an outstanding defensive line coach. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw that in.
Yep,
Go ahead,
absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very good point. I think schematically, I wonder how much of a glimpse we got into the defensive tackle rotation last night. For instance, the snap counts at defensive tackle were Audric and Mitchell both got 13 snaps, and Starks got 9. So it's pretty good rotation. But do we trust that maybe that may become the norm, where Starks is more the rotational guy? They're all going to rotate, but if you're going by straight snap count, it would allude at least that Starks may not be the bona fide starter.
Well, the first play of the game, all three of them were on the field. It was I form with a tight end, so Audric was over the tight end. Starks was in between them, and Mitchell was zero tech with Wallace outside the right tackle. So I thought that was quite an interesting way to start, and obviously maybe that's how they're going to approach almost going to a 3-man front almost with an edge player. So I thought that was quite interesting. Maybe that's how they're going to approach power football a bit more. So yeah, but I think that's an interesting point, and I think most people saw Solio and Starks as the starters last year, but Audric played more than all of them. And we saw with the Dolphins depth chart, they listed 3 defensive tackles as starters. So I think that's an interesting point. And I think that's one benefit of Mitchell over Solio is you don't need to sub him out if you have a zero tech and then you move into nickel or whatever, or you're against spreads. You can be a bit more gap penetrating at a 1 to 3 to 5 even. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. We don't have a true nose tackle, and then AJ Francis being after, I think that kind of cements his place as the 4th defensive tackle.
He's probably the whenever we switch to that 3-4 over to the bring him in as the nose or whatever. And I'm okay with him there, to be honest. I've seen some pretty decent play over over the years.
Yeah, I thought he plays well.
What you guys, while we're talking about defensive line, what did you guys think about soon-to-be suspended Dion Jordan?
I didn't watch him. I saw that one time he dropped into coverage. He looked fluid. Other than that, I thought it was interesting. He was subbed in quite late. So that was quite interesting. He was playing with the third stringers for a while. So whether that's just getting more reps now before he sits for a bit of camp, maybe he's just getting the snap count out. So I doubt he'll play much of the third preseason game. It's generally that's week 1 starters. So perhaps that's why. But I didn't particularly watch him that much. So I'll hand it over to you, Rob.
Yeah, I didn't notice him a whole lot. The one time I really noticed him was on the Jaquiz Rogers touchdown run, where he took a false step. He kind of looked like he went to step inside, then he realized the run was coming outside by that time. It was already too late. He had a double team on him, and he got pushed back into the end zone. So that's really the only time that I noticed him, to be honest with you.
Okay. A couple things that I noticed is in the run, he didn't still quite look like he's up to speed in setting the edge against the run. That you just highlighted one of the plays that kind of also made me think that as well. But once again, Dion Jordan is out there. He's showing his presence in the pass rush game, in my opinion, because I remember seeing a hit in a hurry. I don't know what the pass rushing efficiency is on that, because I don't know exactly how many snaps he played in rushing the passer yet, but I don't think he played all that much, and two pressures on whatever snaps. It's got to be pretty decent.
Pro Football Focus have 21 pass rushes.
Had what?
21 pass rushes and 30,
21?
and 33 snaps.
So
10%, which is pretty close.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
that's pretty close to what he was doing last year as well. If you kind of look at his hurries, his pass rush snaps, it was quite efficient.
Right, I think.
And there was a Wheeler, the Wheeler penalty was one of them.
Okay.
I think. I believe it was kind of like both of them got there at the same time, and Wheeler put a hat on the helmet. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't particularly looking out for him, I wouldn't say. Is there anyone kind of on either of you that kind of stood out as kind of surprise performances or kind of doing something you were looking for someone to do?
I was looking for Landry to do, some more. Actually, anything. But I mean, he had the run back, which was nice. But as far as in the receiving game, he just wasn't looked at much. There were times that he was open, but he got thrown to I think once or maybe twice, and I don't think he had any receptions.
I had one in screen that got blown up straight away.
What's that?
He got one reception, a screen pass that was blown up straight away, where it's kind of like juggled, caught, catch. But other than that, he wasn't really targeted. But yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I thought it was interesting it was in the return game, so I didn't really think anyone was challenging Thigpen for a job. I couldn't really see anyone that was a real returner, so I think maybe there is a battle at that position if we see Landry get some more touches. In that
Landry,
aspect.
Yeah, in special teams returning, Landry took a very different approach to how he runs back that Thigpen does, and I found it interesting because Landry he was like, all right, if you're going to hit me, you're going to hit me, and I'm just going to try to shed that tackle, whereas Thigpen's more, okay, I'm going to try to juke around you a little bit, and it's just different.
Thigpen runs outside, and Landry ran straight up the field. That's the way it looked to me.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, the thing about Landry is I think Landry's going to catch a ton of balls this year in the 8 to 12-yard range and do exactly what we're just talking about. He's going to catch the ball and turn the ball upfield and make some plays in the middle of the field. I've seen some stuff this morning on Twitter from some big-time, writers in South Florida that said the Dolphins were, did a wrong thing last night because they showed their 6 best plays or whatever, 6 best plays. I honestly think that's probably one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard. Because Wallace wasn't on the field, Hartline wasn't on the field, and maybe the biggest difference maker on our offense, Charles Clay, or mismatch, should I say, or the biggest mismatch we have on our offense, Charles Clay wasn't even on the field. So when you have Mike Wallace running deep, and you're going to have a lot of space in the middle of the field for guys like Landry and Charles Clay to catch balls, I think Landry's going to catch a ton of balls and make some big plays this year. I'm actually very excited. I'm not the biggest Gibson fan, but obviously there is some chemistry between Ryan Tannehill and Brandon Gibson. So I'm excited going forward to see what this offense holds, how it develops, the chemistry that grows, how Ryan grows, and what Laser does. So I'm excited.
Oh yeah, definitely, and I think there's reason to be excited.
The thing about real quick about the running game was I noticed last night, and I don't know if you guys noticed it, or it was just me. The line got very little push in the run game, but there are running backs. I think like guys like Terrell Davis, Alfred Morris. They make their living off cutback runs. Yeah. I think there's going to be opportunity for cutback big gains in the run game this year. if the running back has enough vision to see the cutback lane. I noticed there were a couple last night that Lamar Miller missed. So I think there's going to be opportunity. I hope they can see that. But I think that's really going to be the biggest area that we're going to be able to get some big gains is in cutback, unless guys like Billy Turner and Shelley Smith get in the lineup and really develop.
I'm really hoping that we'll start using a little more of I don't know, I don't remember the exact terminology for it right now, but one of the more common reads for a running back in a zone scheme is to flow along with the offensive line and then choose a hole as it opens, as opposed to going at the offensive line or behind it. It wants to flow with it, and I don't really see that yet as far as schematically. So I'm interested to see if they're going to incorporate that.
Generally, Benton and Gibbs, they'll teach 75 to, you're running at 75% to, this is on outside zone, to the back, to like that, the inside leg or the arse of the tackle, whichever way they're going. So that's generally kind of what they teach. And then the first, in outside zone, I mean, this is dependent on kind of where the play is designed to go, but generally the first read is the gap between the tackle and the guard, then the second read is outside, the third tackle is back. So maybe that's what whoever said that thing about the 6 best plays were showing us. Maybe they're referring to inside and outside zone and the 3 reads. I gather that's not, because I know who it is.
I think that might just be the infamous Miami beat writer saying, "Hey, they had 6 great plays, so obviously they were the 6 best they had."
Now I actually think the Dolphins can really open up the running game by being an efficient passing team, which I think will happen. As I mentioned, guys like Landry and Clay and Gibson, who can take those kind of short gains for chunky yardage. I think if they can develop that, I think it will open up lanes for the running backs. So,
absolutely. Everybody talks, one of my things I was trying to harp on this past week is everybody's so concerned with the deep ball and how it affects the running game. But honestly, in the West Coast offense, you want the passing offense or run supplement passing to spread them out wide, and that will keep the safeties occupied looking out wide and clear that box for you. It's the same effect. It's just a different approach of getting there. So what you're saying with using Landry and Gibson and all them, and also even running back screens, all that stuff alone should contribute to better running, because there'll be less guys clogging up that middle.
Absolutely.
And I think one thing to remember is Benton's never not had a 1,000-yard runner. So he's kind of got, and that's 10 years of the Texans always producing an 1,000-yard runner. So yes, and I do believe Benton is designing the running game and everything that's. But I don't think he would have come to Miami without that role, and people say before laser, and you want that. You want someone who knows about blocking.
I think the only position we haven't really talked about is the tight ends.
And I was actually quite impressed with Sims. Well, he flashed some in blocking that I've never seen before, so I was pretty impressed. He got to the second level a couple of times, had good hand placements, nice drive. So that was really good to see. Never saw that last year.
Absolutely, because we've mentioned it many times, but last year it wasn't good. His blocking. Actually, really none of our tight ends were good blocking last year, even Clay. But Sims, I believe, was the worst. Which, being that he was brought in to do that, inline blocker in the draft. So I was disappointed to see that last year. But I agree with you. I don't want to say last night he looked great run blocking, but he definitely had marked improvement.
he looks serviceable, which is a vast improvement.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you want. He's going to be normally against either, like he's going to be cleaning up the back, like being either half on landmarking, moving up to a linebacker, which he did a couple of times. And that's kind of things I was looking for. Find your designated landmark and get to them. So he did that well. I think something that maybe people don't understand as well about inside zone run is the reads come from outside, so they start with the tight end. If the tight end makes the wrong landmark, whether it's the safety or the linebacker, that goes all the way through. And so it's important that kind of we're seeing that recognition being correct early on. That bodes well. And I was really down on Dion Sims last year, and I thought Lynch was kind of the nail in the coffin for him. But yeah, I was happy to see some marked improvement, which you should expect from a second-year player. So that was good. And then the only other tight end was Brackett, who was basically the passing attack for 3 quarters with
Kyle Miller.
Was he? I didn't really see him much. I don't know if he was he predominantly inline, and then Brackett was kind of like the Joker-esque.
Right. Now Agnew did get one snap last night.
Oh, really?
It was a run blocking snap. So I'm not sure if why with both Lynch and Clay not playing, why they wouldn't get a little bit more look at Agnew in the passing game. Because if
he has as well, so that's weird that he was in for one play though. But he had I think it was concussion. For like the last week. So it's odd for him to go in for one play. So maybe they just needed a body.
Yeah, maybe. What was it? Oh, we were talking about the run blocking in the offensive line and how we didn't really like all that much what we saw. I just pulled up the run blocking for the starting offensive line, and I'm going to go down the list here, starting from left tackle. Albert had a negative 0.05 or 0.5 grade, so that's about average. But College had a negative 1.4. Satelli had a negative 1.2. Thomas had a negative 2.9, and James had a negative 1.8.
Okay. And then how about when Billy and Shelley came in?
And who?
Billy and Shelley Smith.
Shelley had a positive 0.6.
And Billy Turner?
Billy Turner had also a positive 0.6.
Okay, so I think normally I'm kind of off with Pro Football Focus O-line's grades, but that kind of matches my eye test of winning the run game anyway. So yeah, I think that will kind of make sense in what we saw.
Think, as far as their grades go, I tend to ignore the pass grade, and I much prefer the signature PBE for that to try to determine. But as far as run blocking goes, I often kind of agree with their run block grade.
I think we've gone through everyone other than the quarterbacks. I think that's the last position. And I guess we saw Tannehill make 6 throws, pretty much do nothing at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
Have probably one pressure on him. So I don't think we can really gather much from that. So I think what we do know is they need another backup, not named Lobato, to play next week.
Yeah, I don't want to see any more of Lobato. I saw him at the scrimmage and I didn't like him there, and then I saw him last night. I'm just like,
Yeah, that was pretty torturous. So, have either of you got any final thoughts you want to go as we reach almost the hour mark?
I'm excited to see what happens in the next preseason game. I'm excited to see I'm guessing the first team offense is going to get a few more series of play. So I'd like to see the same play kind of roll over into the next game, so that we know this wasn't just some fluke that we actually are growing as an offense. We're growing as a team. I like to see the development of Tannehill. He just looks the part. I thought he, from the first snap last night, to me, he looks the man. He looks like he has the confidence. I like that. I'd like to see the development of our offense a little bit more every week as we move on. Again, I was pleased with last night in some areas, and then there's some areas where I'm concerned. But it's the preseason. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be mistakes, and this is where these mistakes get ironed out at. And as long as they're corrected, come the first week of the season, then we're good. And that's what I'm anticipating.
I think one thing I kind of took away, I charted the first, how many seconds were left in the play clock at every snap of the first drive, and yet the floor was 12 and the roof was 18 seconds. We didn't really see, it didn't seem like the offense was kind of struggling with anything. They kind of knew where everything was and were quite calm, so that kind of tempo is really positive even out of the huddle. I know Chip Kelly, he kind of wants to always have 21 seconds left on the clock when they snap the ball, so we're not at their kind of no huddle lightning pace, but I think the tempo everyone seems comfortable in it, and it can be effective whether they're going to end up getting that kind of defensive mismatch advantage is kind of my one question mark with it. Why I would preference a no huddle is you can kind of manipulate matchups or who you're seeing when you see a good look. But the tempo looked good. I think they looked comfortable in the offense, and kind of saw improvements from some of the younger players. So that was pretty good. And Dustin, if you want to finish us off.
I only have one final thought, and that is a sigh of relief that we finally have in-game irrefutable proof that Go and Go is gone. That's it.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we'll say goodbye on that note, and make sure you keep checking out the site. We'll have weekly content. Hopefully won't have another 2,000 words essay on a preseason game. But look out for FinDepth by name and really long by nature. Alright, well, have a good night. Thanks for watching.
Hey, fins up, guys.